Today's Ash Wednesday, which means in a few minutes you're going to come up here and you're going to get some ashes smeared on your forehead in the shape of a cross. We make the sign of the cross to remind ourselves and to remind each other that we've been purchased and won by Jesus Christ because of his death on the cross. To be purchased and won by Jesus Christ because of his death on the cross means two things. First, it means that on the last day, when you and I are standing in front of the judge on his throne of glory, when we're standing in front of the God who dwells in unapproachable light, the God that made you and me and knows who you and I really are and what you and I are really for because of what Jesus has done for you and for me. When God looks at you and looks at me, he sees what he sees when he looks at Jesus. He sees one of his children dressed in white, washed in his blood, standing there guiltless before the throne, forgiven and free. The cross of Christ on our forehead and on our hearts marks us as one redeemed by Christ the crucified. The cross on your forehead reminds you that that's your future, no matter what's in your past. But today's not just about that day, it's about today too. The cross on our foreheads is supposed to remind us about what our present is all about too. Yeah, the cross marks us as people that get to follow Jesus into eternity, but it also marks us as people who follow him in this life too. And Jesus says it this way. He says, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. Whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. What good would it be for someone to gain the whole world and yet waste their life? And what could anyone give to get back the life that God always had in mind for them? Today is the first day of a season called Lent. And back home in Chicago, we grew up giving stuff up for Lent. Are you familiar with this practice? How many of you have successfully given something up for the entire season of Lent? How many of you have tried and failed? I wonder how many of you, the thing you tried to give up was somehow food related, or maybe you tried to give up technology or social media for 40 days, or maybe you tried to just change a behavior that had become a habit. I'm sure some of you have heard this story before. I've got a strong memory of my most significant Lenten failure when I was a senior in high school. Many of you know that I competed varsity in gymnastics on floor and vault, and that I was also a cheerleader in high school. And there was a significant portion of those seasons that overlapped. So I spent most of my day at school. We'd get there early to lift weights, and then we would have school all day, and then we would have practice, and then we would have practice again. All that to say is you can imagine that I needed to eat a certain amount of calories just to stay awake. Well, Lent rolls around my senior year, and one of my best friends, who was Hindu and a vegetarian, convinced me to give up meat for Lent, just to kind of walk in his shoes for a little while. I knew this would be a significant challenge, but I thought it might be fun. And my youth group at church was accustomed to practicing at least once during Lent something called a 30-hour famine. And this is exactly what it sounds like. You don't eat for 30 hours. But what you do during that time is whenever you get hungry while you're fasting for that day, you pray, not just for the ability to get through the temptation to eat and the discomfort from feeling hungry. You pray for people that feel this way all the time, people that are hungry or starving around the world. And whatever money you would have spent on food that day, you set aside. We pool it all together as a youth group, and then we send it into an organization that can provide food for people who are chronically malnourished. So I hope you can appreciate the confluence of all of these outside forces on my senior year Lenten experience. During that 40-day period, I felt pretty hungry, pretty tired. Well, here's where my failure comes in. One night I get home after a long day, and I put my key in the front door, and as I crack the front door to enter the house, I'm hit in the face by the smell of my Italian grandma's meatballs. When I've had more time in the past, I've told this story more skillfully, but let's just say you can fast forward to me standing over the stove, burning my tongue as I eat 4 or 5, maybe 6 fist-sized meatballs straight out of the simmering sauce. What I looked like and how I felt is similar to the first scene of a werewolf movie where the main character suddenly wakes up covered in red and feeling the intense remorse of having done something they regret when they feel like they weren't even themselves. You know, win or lose, pass or fail, this idea of giving stuff up for Lent, when we think about denying ourselves, when we think about giving up, most of us, I imagine, think of some sort of sacrifice. We think of giving up an aspect of our lives, giving up a piece of what we do, giving up a bit of who we are temporarily. And we do this from time to time with more or less success. There have been plenty of years since that meatball moment where I have gone an entire Lent without eating meat. There have been years where I didn't drink coffee for 40 days. You know, we do this giving stuff up thing with more or less success, depending on what it is and depending on when it is and how we feel. Sometimes we can actually do it. And as Christians, I think we like this idea of sacrifice. We like to say that when Jesus said to follow him, we have to deny ourselves, he meant this kind of sacrifice, because with this kind of sacrifice, we are still in control. We decide what we're going to give up. We set the terms for the experiment, and it's really still us in the driver's seat, win or lose. But Jesus says that to be people of the cross means more than that. Jesus says, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow him. And the word deny here is the same word that's used when Peter denied Jesus before the crucifixion. Jesus is saying to follow him, you have to disown yourself. And he says this is a good thing, because with him, if you lose your life, you find real life, the life he's always had in mind for you. Now, Paul says it like this: therefore, I urge you, my sisters and brothers, in response to God's mercy, to offer your whole selves as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good and pleasing and perfect will. Giving up in the Lenten context isn't sacrifice. It's not letting go of a piece of your life. For people of the cross, giving up is surrender. It's turning yourself over to God. It's offering yourself to him while you're still alive and saying, you get to decide what the rest of this life is all about. You get to tell me who I am and what I'm for. You know, the thing is, God's not mysterious about this. It's no secret what he wants your life to be about. There was a young man that came to Jesus one time in the Gospels, and he said, hey, what should I focus my life on? And Jesus said, love God back with all that you have inside you, and use whatever he gives you to take care of the world around you. Love the people that he brings into your life and the people that he just brings across your path. That's what he wants for you. That's all he wants from you. Now, I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you what that means for you specifically, but I am going to go out on a limb and guess. I'm going to guess that you bounce back and forth day to day between two modes of existence. You are either busy or bored. And I'm going to guess that it's not just that you're a little bit busy and a little bit bored. My guess is you bounce back and forth between being bored out of your mind and busy out of your mind. Now, I don't know about you. This is something that took me years to figure out how to do. But when I get busy, I scan my schedule looking for opportunities. I try and find holes in the day where I can stick in things that I want to do, things that I think need to get done. I'm trying to figure out when I can fit in what I want to do into what I have to do today. Is it like that for you? But I want you to think about this. Jesus is scanning our schedules too. And he's looking for opportunities too. He's looking for ways to take what you're going to do today and fit in what he wants to get done. And honestly, the truth is, what you want to accomplish with your day and what he wants to accomplish with your day are not always the same, right? So maybe this Lent, you're going to give up chocolate or coffee or a bad habit, or maybe you're going to start a good one for 40 days. But I'm suggesting to you today that maybe what it means for you to surrender this Lent would be to surrender your calendar, and not to take stuff off necessarily if you're too busy, or to put stuff on if you're too bored. It's not about removing or adding a piece of your life, but to give him your whole day, to just lay it out to him, as full as it is or as bare as it is, and say, okay, God, here's what we're working with. And then ask him how he wants to use that time. Now get me here. I'm not saying you're asking God what to put onto your calendar. I'm saying you're showing God what you have on your calendar and saying, while I'm doing all of this, what do you want to do? Pray about that time. Pray about what's going to happen. Pray for the people that you're inevitably going to bump into. You say, on Tuesdays, I have this class, which means I sit next to this person. You're not asking God if he wants you to drop the class or transfer schools. You're saying, on Tuesday, I'm going to show up to this class and I'm going to sit next to this person. So what do you want to do? Ask him to see over the course of this day that you already have planned where you're going to be tempted to go into autopilot and not even really think about what you're saying and doing. If I'm being honest, I'm not really trying to get used by God when I go to the grocery store. I just want to get asparagus and leave. But the truth is, if I think about the fact that God's going with me to the grocery store, it changes how I interact with the people around me. Just be honest about what's in your day. Forecast what's going to be challenging. Identify where you happen to fail over and over again. God wants you to build up the people around you, but you can't make it through B period without typing to this person that they look stupid. Pray about that. Ask for help to see what he wants you to do with these interactions that you're going to have. This cross on your forehead means that each new day is a fresh start and another chance, not just to sacrifice, but to surrender. The cross on your forehead means that today can have purpose. This cross means, in the true sense of Lent, that you really can give up. Grace and peace to you, my friends.